I'm Dale Smith for Loony Politics, and we've got some more questions about just what Mark Carney's commitment to emissions reduction targets actually are. Now, you might remember that we've made binding commitments, legally binding commitments under the Paris Accords for 2030 and 2035 emissions reductions. And we are no longer within spitting distance of actually achieving those. In fact, it's getting worse. Now, Carney keeps saying that he's committed to net zero 2050, but the road to getting there is increasingly unclear, particularly because of measures he's taken, like destroying the consumer carbon levy, for example, or pausing EV mandates, and talking about increasing oil and gas production to fill potential new pipelines, which he claims would try to be decarbonized, but that's part of the problem. The notion that we can still meet our reduction targets through carbon capture and storage and clean electricity are probably not going to cut it, particularly because carbon capture is very expensive and is uneconomical unless you've got a sufficiently high carbon price. Now, Carney does say that he wants to strengthen the industrial emission price, but that also does tend to disproportionately punish places like Alberta and Saskatchewan because of the oil production in those provinces. And it leads the question to whether he's going to be convinced by the industry for the federal government to wind up subsidizing a lot of this carbon capture, which then allows the industry to essentially nationalize the costs while privatizing the profits, because otherwise the economics don't make sense. If they increase production while paying for the carbon capture and storage process, well, that basically comes out as a wash, and they're not really interested in doing that, which is why they keep trying to convince the federal government to pay into this, which is what we don't want, but Carney seems increasingly convinced. Now, the other thing we need to really take a look at is just what these commitments are to reduction targets, because it seems like we're going back to the Harper era of what he used to call aspirational targets. Now, what that essentially means is, yes, we'll agree to a target, but we're not going to try and reach it. And when we don't meet it, we'll say, at least we tried, even though we didn't actually try to meet it. But that seems to be what Carney is heading toward. And, the notion that he has become the second coming of Stephen Harper sounds a little more true every single day. For Loony Politics, I'm Dale Smith.